But I was walking out again one day, and I was walking out next to him. I'm like, hey man, I got to stop you. I got to introduce myself. What's your name? What are you training for? Looks me dead in the eye. Sex and zombies. I was like, what?
Welcome to Coach 'em Up. I'm Tim Riley. We've got no Zach Zillner today. He had to blow us off. He had other things like a real job to attend to, which is fine because I'm here with Alec Blenis. Alec, how are you, dude?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you.
Dude, thanks for coming out. I just want to say, it's been so fun and easy interacting with you throughout this whole process. Not everyone is that the case. And bonus points for absolutely burying Zach in that workout today. That was very fun to watch.
That was a lot of fun. If you need to bury someone, lunges are the way to go.
Did you have it? Was it programmed, or did you know that
Oh, it's just my Friday workout.
Got it. Nice. Yeah, it's just a walk in the park for you.
Oh, I wouldn't say that. But I mean, I had an advantage. I've been doing this workout a couple weeks in a row, and he's got thrown into the fire. So
he certainly did. Now, I will say, so Zach it looked like he hung with you every step of the way. You kind of had a little bit of an edge because you did run 13 miles.
I did a couple hours ago.
Yes. Yeah. Just a few hours ago. What was your pace, just for the people listening so they know what kind of animal we're talking to here?
Including the dip in Barton Springs, it averaged at like a 7:30, 7:40.
Jesus Christ, dude.
Running along the river.
Guys, it's hot and humid here in Austin, Texas too. So, that's just incredibly impressive. Well, dude, I've been following you for a while, and just as someone who's in the training space and in the online and social media space, I just want to say I've got a ton of respect. And for what you do, the way you articulate information, how thoughtful it is, and your fucking meme game is incredible, dude.
Thanks.
So awesome. So, before I get ahead of myself, I know who you are. And I would imagine most people listening to this know who you are. But for the people who don't, can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into coaching? Give us the who the hell you are story.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a hybrid athlete, if you will. Just a dude who likes fitness. I like to run. I like to bike. I like to lift. I like to try to do a lot of things. None of them at a extremely high level. I always joke it's mediocre at a lot of things. Yeah. Right. But to be fair, I'm somewhat well known for having the fastest known Murph time. So I have some accomplishments.
Yeah, that's a big one.
The fitness space.
Yeah.
But most importantly to me, the thing nearest and dearest to my heart is just making fitness simple for people.
Yeah.
My experience with the fitness industry overall is that there's a lot of just overcomplicating stuff, a lot of made up rules, a lot of dogma, and it just annoys me. As someone who's been in fitness in some shape or form for my entire life, done a lot of sports, team sports, ultra marathon running, weightlifting, all the stuff, getting to pull from all those experiences. I realize the importance of just big picture principles instead of all the rules and stuff people make up in each of these tribes. So I like to try to bring some humor to it.
Yeah.
Try to break down some barriers, make fitness easier for people. That's what I'm really passionate about. I've been coaching, gosh, I want to say 10 something years. I don't really keep track. But it was never really my intent to be a coach. I originally wanted to be a physicist, actually, of all things. But just through, being an athlete, I think it's natural that people will come to you and ask for advice. And, a lot of people have kind of coached their friends or their family and that kind of thing. And that's really how it all started. And, through word of mouth and referrals, suddenly I'm helping more people. And I'm like, I got to charge some money for this. And all of a sudden there's this business, right? Mm-hmm. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And so I just kind of went with that direction, gave up some of the, physics aspirations. And I think that's the best decision I've ever made. Been loving every minute of my job for, a decade now.
That's so awesome, man. So you gave up pursuing your PhD in physics to go full fitness.
full fitness.
Yeah, hell yeah. I'm interested to know a little more about your athletic background. What were your sports growing up, and how did you find endurance? Yeah,
I think an advantage that I had is I started a lot of sports really young because I had an older brother who was in sports. And, my parents were gracious enough to, be paying for tennis lessons, right? And so when my brother was starting to play tennis and baseball and stuff, and I'm like too young to really play, or like I should be too young to play.
Yeah.
My parents are like, will you please like get some energy out of this little rascal?
Right. Yeah. Let him tag along.
Just let him swing a racket around, right? So like I started taking tennis lessons when I was like 4 years old or something, right? So like, no, just running around the tennis court.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But I've just been exposed to a lot of things from a very young age. So I think having that broad base is great. But it feels weird to say because it's been so long now, but I probably played tennis for like 12, 13 years, which is like a big chunk of my athletic career. I played a lot of baseball. Also feels weird to say because I haven't played baseball in so long, but kind of what I did growing up. Did track and field, cross country, football, believe it or not. I played defensive end.
What? You played defensive end?
I did, and then I stopped growing in like 6th grade.
Oh, I see.
The kids get bigger and bigger, and I'm like, I'm gonna get murdered out here.
Right? Yeah. Enough is enough.
Yeah, and I got away with it with like some speed and agility and stuff, and then at some point I'm like, I got hit real hard one time. I'm like, I can't take another one of those.
I'm good. I'm all set.
So that my football career ended real young. Did a little bit of wrestling, did a little bit of soccer. So like, just a little bit of
a lot of exposure to a lot of different stuff. How cool.
It was great. And, I was better at some sports than others.
Did you have one that like you particularly excelled at like immediately, or was there one that like you look back and you're like, that was my jam?
Yeah, I probably should have stuck with baseball and tennis because I'm actually pretty good at them.
Yeah.
I think because I had started so young, I just wanted something different.
Totally.
Got a little burnt out.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones, running, I started and I was not good. I was a terrible runner. I was usually the slowest kid at field day.
Wow.
Doing the 100-meter dash.
Yeah.
And I went to a pretty small school and I started track and I fell into the mile and the 2 mile because I was like the only kid left on the team. Like they had given like the 400, the 800
to all the fast people. And I'm like, well, what about me, coach?
Right. Yeah. And they're like, well, 2 mile.
Right.
Oof. And I wasn't good.
Right.
But I didn't care. Like I didn't really think about it. I just liked doing the stuff. One of my claims to fame for anyone back home in Roswell, Georgia, a friend of mine we single-handedly started the pole vaulting program at the school I was at because we discovered it on the internet, right? And we're like, this looks awesome. Yeah. Just like classic, 12-year-old boy, like want to fly up in the air.
Yeah, heck yeah.
And so we went to my coach and we're like, we want to pole vault. And they're like, well, we don't have the stuff for that in, middle school at this small school. And so we talked to our parents. We're like, we really want to pole vault. And so got some money together, got some equipment and started pole vaulting.
Wow.
And actually was pretty good at it. That was probably one of the first things because I had been bad at running. And I think part of it too is that pole vaulting was fun.
Yeah.
So when it comes to just hey, sprint 100 yards, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But pole vaulting, it's you get to sprint to then fling yourself up.
Yeah.
I'll sprint all day.
Yeah.
So I just started doing it more, went to camps and clubs and that kind of stuff. So got pretty good at pole vaulting for a little while. And then again, it was another case of, I got to a certain level and the coach I was working with at this club, he was also a short guy. He was like me. He's like, hey, I want to talk to you about something.
Oh no.
And he's like, you're pretty good. I was pretty good too. But there's only so good guys like us can get at pole vaulting. And he's like, I just want to level with you. And I'm like, I get it.
Yeah.
And so gradually,
shout out to coach for, giving you the talk.
He was honest. But man, that's a fun sport. It is. It's a lot of fun. I'd like to get back into it, even if I'm not great. It's just fun to fly in the air like that. But, for a variety of reasons, I kind of got just pushed more in the direction of distance running, because you can be 5'5" and distance run. It doesn't matter. So started doing more and more of that, and eventually became good at it. I was not born good at distance running. Like I started off as one of the slowest runners, and just because that was the thing I kept doing and had the most consistency with, eventually I could hold my own. I started, placing pretty well at cross country meets and that kind of thing. And then finally that kind of the peak of that was mid high school, 10th, 11th grade. I transferred schools out of my district because I wanted to go to this fancy school for academics, right?
Sure.
It got flagged as I was being recruited for cross country.
Oh.
And they're like, you have to sit out, you can transfer schools, but you have to sit out a season because I don't know, some weird, Georgia high school.
Yeah. We had stuff like that in Tennessee growing up. You couldn't transfer for.
Yeah. So I'll find some stuff to do. So I started doing road races. I discovered a Spartan race. I did an obstacle race, just trying to stay fit, do different fitness stuff. And I had never fallen in love with anything fitness related that much. As I had with obstacle races specifically, but really just doing races that weren't for school, like mile, 2 mile, 5K.
Right.
I started discovering 10Ks and half marathons and obstacle races, and this whole wide world of running opened up. And I was like, I don't even want to run for school.
Right.
This is so cool. There's so many options.
This is better.
It's so fun. I get to go run in the mountains, and this is amazing.
Yeah.
Why I don't want to run a 5K loop of mulch.
Right.
I mean, if you love it, good for you.
Right.
But I just fell in love with running more broadly, right? And I started doing a lot of obstacle races in particular because I thought they were just super fun. And then at the same time, I enjoyed the challenge of running longer and longer distances. I'd run a half marathon. I was like, well, a marathon would be awesome. I'm a 16-year-old kid at the time.
Yeah, that's pretty because most young people that's not common.
Yeah, because you're stuck running for school.
Right.
I don't know, it's just not common here. But anyway, I started looking for races, and keep in mind, I'm 16 at the time. I'm looking for races, and I find this thing called the North Face Endurance Challenge. And it's a race series, and they have every race distance possible. So bring everyone, bring your kids, bring your family. You can do a mile, a 5K, a half marathon, a marathon, cool. 50K, 50 mile. They have all the races up to 50 miles. And I start looking at the registration page, and I'm like, 50 miles? I didn't even know it was a thing. I'm like, a 50-mile race? And I signed up. I don't know. I can't tell you to this day why I thought that was a good idea, why I thought it was possible. No one talked. My parents were like, no, you're not running 50 miles. Nobody stopped me. I'm like, sure, just going to sign up for this thing. And this was a few weeks out even. I'm just like, I don't know. I just think this sounds great. And so I went to the local park. I'm like, I'm going to see how far I can go. In training, this is 2 weeks out. I run 25 miles at my local park. Didn't die. So I'm like, all right, 50, let's go.
Whoa.
And holy shit, I got so humbled. Oh man. I was deep into the barefoot running rabbit hole at the time.
Were your feet in fucking shambles, dude?
My feet were in shambles. I went out too hot like an idiot. I run super fast. Just every mistake that somebody can make.
Yeah.
I made.
Yeah.
And I want to say maybe 30 miles in, right? I'm beat. I'm walking.
Yeah.
I'm very dejected because I'd run really fast, and I'm it's a death march, right? Mm-hmm. And sooner or later, these older, very experienced, masters, ultra runners catch up with me, and they get me moving faster. I end up running a good portion of the race with them.
Wow.
I get that kick of adrenaline, right? I ran the last couple miles pretty hard. And all things considered, for all the errors I made, for as inexperienced as I was, I still remember I got 22nd place at this race, finished in just under 11 hours for a mountain 50 miler.
Jesus, dude.
Which is not bad. It's not bad. And I thought maybe my potential lies in the the longer end of the spectrum. Because I'd never been great at like the speed stuff. My mile was decent, but like nothing to write home about. So doing this ultra race, finishing, doing well despite having no reason to have done well.
Right.
I'm like, this is where it's at. So I start running a lot of ultras. I start running a lot of Spartan races, obstacle races. Do pretty well. I get signed to the Spartan Pro team. So they're, paying me to travel around, do all the races. So
Wow.
I think I did 50 or 60 Spartan races.
Holy shit.
Over like a 2 or 3 year span, plus ultras, plus going to college. So it was so much.
That's a lot.
But I was making connections.
Yeah.
You're traveling, you're meeting people. And that's a really cool thing to do at that age.
And you're trained. So in training, all right, you discover ultra running. Next thing you know, it's like it's kind of like off to the races, where now it's like you're fully immersed in this lifestyle. You get fucking signed.
Yeah.
You're doing it at a professional level, and you're running ultras. The first thing that comes to mind, I'm thinking about this. I'm like, how are you training for all this? Like, what is the programming? Like, what's going on there?
It's just brute force, right? Like
you're just doing the thing.
You're just doing the thing. I'm racing like every other weekend. I'm doing some misguided but challenging stuff in the gym and making progress. Doing workouts that I find on the internet, reading T-Nation articles.
Hell yeah, dude.
Just
shout out old school T-Nation,
oh, yeah, dude.
Bodybuilding.com and T-Nation. Let's go.
Just doing all this stuff. But like I'm definitely learning quickly because like I'm making connections with people who have been doing it longer and are smarter than me. I'm pretty good about finding good sources. Read some, weightlifting books and that kind of stuff, and like start to figure out what I'm doing. The progress starts to come faster and faster. And then sooner or later, I'm pretty good at a lot of this stuff. I get connected to a CrossFit gym, start doing more like CrossFit structured programming. So I get exposed to a wide variety of kind of influences and that kind of stuff. And, eventually I was good enough that people start asking for help. And like, yeah, I've done, and, I ran the Boston Marathon when I was 18. I was like one of the youngest people at Boston.
Whoa.
So to have that experience, and like I get older people, in their 30s, 40s, like adults in my mind, that I'm like, oh yeah, I've run Boston. Like, you've run Boston? You're like 18.
Yeah, you're a fucking kid, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I probably had to be one of the like youngest people to get into online coaching. So like I just had a tremendous amount of experience for my age. By the time I graduated college, I think I had run like 250, 300 races.
Whoa.
All over the country, ultras, road marathons, obstacle races, and then like the track and field experience and stuff like that as well. So I just done a lot. And my coaching business took off. The experience showed I was able to get other people results, and here we are.
Wow. So it's fascinating to me because it's like and we talked a little about this before the show, where you start doing really well, you're figuring stuff out for yourself, and then you're kind of like thrust in this position where like now you're coaching people.
Yeah.
So I would love to know, what coaching looked like for you then, and like what were the things that maybe initially you thought were like super important, or like the way you structured and viewed things, as opposed to now, and just sort of the arc of how that's looked for you.
Yeah. I'd say the biggest thing that has changed, and I want to give myself some credit because I think it doesn't look drastically different. Like I look back at programs I've written, I'm like, oh, that was, I could have done better.
Yep.
But it was never like completely idiotic, and like I am proud of that. Even if I look back at programs that I wrote 10 years ago, I'm like, yeah, all right, it's all right. Like,
yeah.
That'll work.
Right.
But the biggest thing that has changed is there's so many more options. Like I can see 20 ways to get someone to the goal.
Yeah.
Right. And then I had, what I had done. And I'm like, I know this works, but there's so many other things that can work too. And really being able to figure out like, what is this person going to have the most fun with, considering a bunch of other variables. When it came to like really individualizing it to the person, I just didn't have the experience and the reps with like working with different types of people.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know this workout program works, but like, am I forcing it to work for you?
Right.
Versus being a little bit more client centered. So I think that's
could there be a better way for this person? Does it have to look precisely like this. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I've gotten progressively more client-centered. It sounds corny, but like more fun-focused.
Yeah.
I was very like data-oriented and very like just do the workout.
Yeah.
You know?
Is that your baseline? Just kind of like is your personality? Do you find more comfort in the data and the numbers, and has it become like a more of a learned thing for you, or is it just training, or is that a reflection of Alec Blenis?
So when I started, you know, when I was 18, 19, 20, you could have asked me like, you know, what workout are you going to do on October 5th? It could have been February. And I would have been like, let me pull up my spreadsheet. I'll tell you.
Wow.
So like I had it planned to a T.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was always for the best.
Right.
You know?
Would you hold yourself to the standard no matter what?
Pretty much. Pretty much.
There's so many lessons to be learned in that though.
Yeah. And like it does work.
Sure.
It's not, you know, it kind of works until it doesn't, I guess.
Yeah.
And it works when you're a college kid with like testosterone through the roof and like your parents are paying for your rent.
Right. There's a lower systemic stress.
You can just brute force it like all the training.
Yeah.
And it sticks. But you know, that changes eventually.
Yeah. It does.
You got to get,
Yes, it does.
you got to bring some feelings into it a little bit.
Yeah.
Some emotions into it a little bit. And so I'm a big believer now in like, you know, what do people enjoy doing? What are people going to be engaged with? You know, keep track of some of the numbers, but don't program to the numbers. Don't program to the metric. I definitely got a little bit too caught up in Excel for a little while.
Yeah, I get that. I think it's normal. So in the absence of experience, it's only natural to lean on the data entirely. Because like, what else do you really have to go off of? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It would almost be negligent.
Yeah.
Right? To just assume, it's like, oh, let's just try this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, and then, you know, what I'm hearing from you, correct me if I'm wrong, is like, you know, through experience, time and again, you keep returning to this place that's inherently more rigid and coming up maybe a little short or a little frustrated or finding that it doesn't always work the way the spreadsheet says it should.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I'm certainly a learn by doing guy. And I kind of have to make the same mistake more than once. I haven't been able, I think I talked about this in my last podcast. It's only been later in life where I've been able to watch other people make mistakes or do things and go, oh, you know, maybe I should alter my behaviors to.
Yeah.
And so in that way, like it's only through holding yourself to that impossible standard. I'm speaking for myself here. It's only, you know, my experience holding myself to the standard, to the program, no matter fucking what,
Yep.
that I'm confronted with the reality that that's not always the best way. And at some points in times, it's not even an option anymore.
What it took for me, and I'm an anomaly in that I started online before I coached in person, which I don't think is a good idea.
So you don't recommend that?
I don't recommend it for 99% of people. I wouldn't change anything, right?
Sure, of course.
I have no regrets. But it took adding in-person coaching to learn some lessons of like, oh, that doesn't work.
Yes.
You know, you try something, you have this great idea. You're excited about what this idea you have for a client. Mm-hmm. You bring it in, you're like, all right, let's do it. And then it just fails like right in front of you.
Yes.
And you're like, shit.
That is so, I'm so glad you brought that up because obviously we both have online training businesses and we both now have experience training people in person. But something that I would do is, you know, early on working with particularly Gen Pop clients is I'd write this fucking sick workout and I would get halfway through it. I'm like, we're not going to get through a third of this. What do I, you know? And then an even more impactful experience of me was like, I'm buying programs from coaches that I respect or I view as being an authority or whatever. And I get halfway through their workout and I go, this motherfucker's never done this workout. There's no way this guy's ever done this, dude.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the stuff. It looked great. And, you know, and almost always it's a case of just, we've got too much going on.
Yep. Well, that's another, you know, I want to shout out Alex Viada, you know, grandfather of hybrid training.
He really is the OG.
He is. He really is. And I coach for his company, Complete Human Performance. And when I started working with them, one of the best things about working with them is the collaboration, in the sense that you can see what other coaches are doing with their athletes. So if I want to go in and see, like, how is Alex coaching?
Yeah.
I got to see that.
God, that's so invaluable.
And the biggest...
Do you consider him a mentor?
You know, I would. Definitely an inspiration, someone I've learned a lot from. And looking at his programs for people, especially when I was young and I was getting started, I'd pull up his programming and I was shocked at how simple it was.
Yeah.
You
thought you were going to open it and it was going to be some fucking magical...
Right.
Yeah. Something you're like, oh, I've never thought of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what you're expecting, and you're like, that's it. That's it.
Right.
But that's what the experienced coach does, is they know the few things the person needs.
Yeah.
Rather than just like throwing everything and like, let's hope something sticks.
Yep.
It's what does this person actually need to put their time and energy into. And that was a big lesson.
You know, the trouble with that is that's not sexy and it doesn't sell.
Nope.
You know?
Yeah.
The only way that, you know, and I'm just thinking about this from like a social media perspective, because we both occupy that space. You know, unless you're moving something significant or your time is fast, right? Just delivering the message like, hey, here are the 3 or 4 things I did today, but I did them at an extremely high level. Like it gets, you know, it can feel like maybe this gets boring or people are going to be turned off to this, you know?
Yeah.
How do you navigate that?
You know, I think that the take home message is that a lot of things can work. Mm-hmm. So while good training is simple, there's still space for fun and for variety.
Nice.
So I think you can have a workout that is very just like, you know, like Zach and I our workout this morning, we did 4 exercises, nothing fancy, no like Instagram worthy exercises. Like you got to try.
Oh, best believe it's going up on Instagram, Alec.
Just simple stuff. Right. And we were both cooked. So you can have stuff like that. But like we could have done something interesting and it still would have worked.
Right.
So like figuring out, you know, the person that's in front of you, the person you're working with, what makes them tick, what's going to make them engaged in the program. Mm-hmm. Like Zach and I had no problem just going to town on the leg extension. Yeah. You know, whereas that's not sexy enough for some people. And I can respect that.
Sure.
Like, if that
doesn't do it for you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's do like I'm a big fan of sissy squat variations.
Yep.
And most people that do those,
load it up, baby.
Their quads are wrecked. Yeah. Like, that was fun. They love it. And that's great. Like we don't have to say like, no, you got to go get back on the leg extension for the 900th time. Right. So realizing that, you know, it's not about what exercise is always better. It's about what's, you know, it's loaded knee extension, right? Mm-hmm. And we're stabilizing it. We're making sure we can load it. But it's not about leg extension versus sissy squat versus whatever. Like we're just doing some knee bends, man.
Yeah.
And like
gotta bend the knees.
Yeah. Bend the knees.
Find a way to bend them. Yeah.
Yep. And we can make that as interesting as you want it, as long as we load it and you can get better at it. Like that's the central, like that's the most important part. Obviously there's nuances, but that is the most important part.
The Coach 'em Up podcast is sponsored by Squat Wedgies. Tim, what are squat wedgies?
Squat wedgies are an adjustable squat wedge, 7, 13, and 20 degrees.
It's big enough to elevate your whole foot and not just your heel.
Because it's rubber, it doesn't slide on surfaces.
It's 22 pounds, so it's durable and stable enough for even your biggest athletes.
There's a 90-day risk-free trial. The shipping is free, and
get 15% off squat wedgies with our discount code CoachEmUp15.
Coach 'em Up 15 for 15% off of the best squat wedge on the planet. Coach 'em Up is proud to be sponsored by Plyomat. Plyomat is a jump mat that measures ground contact times, vertical jump height, and reactive strength index.
Plyomat's trusted by over 750 coaches in 25 different countries.
It's something that you can use in training day in and day out to give immediate feedback and drive output and intent.
Plyomat's always in stock. When you order your Plyomat, you can get it within 1 to 3 business days and start your training immediately.
If you get a group of athletes challenging each other to jump higher, get off the ground quicker, it transforms that workout into a highly competitive, highly potent stimulus.
If you would like access to the best jump mat on the planet, use CoachEmUp5 to get 5% off at checkout.
Again, code CoachEmUp5 for 5% off. Come jump with us, get a Plyomat. I want to get back around to the fancy stuff and some of the creativity I've seen you bring to training. But before I forget, since we're on the topic of like kind of training philosophy, how would you describe your philosophy now? I know that's such a tough question, really, but
It is.
And as best you can on the spot.
Yeah.
How would you do that?
I think that your program should be, well, let me back up and say complexity is context and individual specific.
Yeah.
So I can do an exercise, like take the sissy squat. If I'm doing a sissy squat with a landmine, like I can load that up, right? Great exercise for me. I'm not really limited by my balance or anything like that. I'm strong enough and get good range of motion. Great exercise selection for me. For some people, it's too novel. It's too complex. They're thinking about too much.
A lot of setup.
They're like, my toes hurt.
Right. Seriously though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I program that for me, to me, that's very simple. Like, I don't feel like I'm doing anything crazy or complex. Like I throw a bar in a corner, I put a plate on, I go, it's
good to go.
It takes 10 more seconds than getting on the leg extension, right? For other people, it's just not a feasible or simple or very loadable option for a variety of reasons. So a core, tenet of my programming philosophy is make your program simple for you. I think everyone's program should be simple in the context of who they are, what their experience is, that kind of thing. If you're looking at a program and you feel like you have a bunch of like crazy, cool, sexy stuff in there, and you're like, I got to really figure out how to do this one. Like, I don't know if you're putting your energy where it needs to be.
Right.
Like you're having fun, which I appreciate the fun aspect.
Sure.
But like there should be an element of simplicity and ease and flow and like just like let's hammer it. If you want a skill or two, like you can have some fun, but I think your program should be by and large simple to you. I think your program should be hard.
Yeah. Do you think that there's like a link of like simplicity and intensity?
I think they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Or they can. I think that the issue with things that are overly complex is they give the illusion of hard work.
Right.
I find a lot of that with like some prehab exercises, throw a few bands in.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you think you're doing something.
Yeah.
But you're not.
You're not though.
You're not. And most people, unless they're doing something just absolutely stupid, like they come in, they max out every day and whatever. I think that your average person is really more time limited than recovery limited. Again, unless they're doing something really dumb with their program, like most people are just going to run out of time. They can be in the gym in an hour, a couple days a week. Like, are you really going to overtrain? You can do stupid stuff, like you can hurt yourself, whatever. Sure. But like, are you really overtraining if you're working out 3-4 hours a week? I don't think so. Unlikely. So let's use that time to get as much training in as we can.
Totally.
So that's, core tenet number 2 is training should be hard. Do what you got to do. Do your little warm up things. I don't care.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Just do
whatever gets you going, baby.
Whatever gets you going. But for God's sake, can we use the majority of your time in the building to be doing something hard, like actually hard, not conceptually hard, not hard to set up, right? Not looks cool on Instagram,
not complex,
just hard. Yep. And again, that ties back to the first point of simple, complex. It's specific to the individual. So you might look at an exercise someone's doing and be like, it's too complicated. Maybe for you. Yeah. So there's some
subjectivity there.
There's some subjectivity for sure.
Yeah.
But make your program simple, make your program hard. I think if you spend a couple hours a week doing stuff that is simple and hard, you're going to make progress.
100%.
Those are the 2 biggest things. You can individualize, we can add the nuance. But if you fill up a training week of stuff that's simple but hard, you are going to get some results.
Yeah. Yeah. I think most people don't maybe if they're new to training, it can be shocking because what I'll do for particularly with Gen Pop clients or even my athletes, actually, we end up doing the same stuff over and over again. And the only thing that's changing is intensity. It's never not intense. It just gets more intense. And then we rein it in when we need to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe it won't be shocking to you, but I frequently get asked, you know, it's like, why are we doing the same workout again?
Yeah.
We're going to do this. And it's like, absolutely. And then I have the opportunity, you know, it's here's why that's important. And it falls in line with everything that you just said.
I think it's very possible though, because a lot of people crave that novelty experience.
Mm-hmm. You can have both.
And they like to learn. Yeah. You can have both. And like we were talking about, like extension sissy squat, like at the end of the day, we're bending our knees. You know, that's the most important bit. Mm-hmm. And so if you utilize, you know, close variations, you can have like a bi-weekly rotating structure where like 1 week you do this, 1 week you do this. Mm-hmm. And you might have something that looks complicated on paper. Right. It seems complicated to the client or the athlete. Yeah. But when you zoom out and you break down like what's really going on here, right, it's still like pretty simple.
Oh, it's just the intensity is going up over this 4-week period. And even though the exercises are changing, same thing's happening at me. Right. Right.
Exactly. Right. So I think that is kind of the art of coaching, that you can kind of give the person the experience that they want. Yep. You can entertain someone through training that is simple and hard, as long as you know what's going on.
Right. Yeah. I think early on in my career, I would have struggled with that, because I would have felt like, you know, if I'm taking any chances in that space, then I'm not doing the best possible thing, or like what's most optimal. Right. You know, I think you shared some posts on like the idea of everything needing to be optimal and like what that actually means. Yeah. Can you share your views and opinions on that subject?
It can get semantic, so I want to define optimal and like what we mean when we say these sorts of things, because some people would make the argument that like optimal is individual specific, and you're just doing what's best for the person on any given day in the context of, you know, personal preference and logistics and everything. So in that sense, sure, we're always trying to do what's optimal, but that's different than like what's theoretically optimal. Right. You know, and I think that's what some people get caught up in, is what would be optimal, you know, all else being equal when not all else is equal, or what would be optimal if you were you know, mid, you know, 20 to 30-year-old male in a research study. Yeah. You know, what would be optimal. So in that sense, I think, you know, we got to get away from that type of optimal and more towards the first, you know. So when it comes to things like exercise variation and that kind of stuff, I think that you know, optimal is kind of like that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow of like, every time you change perspective or you get closer to it, it moves.
Yeah, it's a mirage. Yeah.
It's not there.
Yeah, that's right.
Every time you try to make something better about somebody's program or an exercise, up to a point, you know, you can have a bad program and make it better, but like eventually there's a give and a take. Yeah. You know, you make something better and something gets worse. You know, it's like those switches and you can't turn them all on. Eventually you reach that point. So I think the goal with movement or programming optimization is just to get to that point. And then once you're like, you know, chasing, you know, 2.5 pounds here, like let's dial the tempo back on this one so we can do whatever. It's like, you've probably done about all the optimization that you can really do. And now you're probably just like trying to entertain yourself.
You know, by the way, I'm going to completely derail our entire conversation for a moment. Have you ever seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
Oh, yeah.
The Leprechaun episode with the pot of gold with Charlie in the basement? That's it. That's all I wanted to say. That's it. When you said that, I love Charlie so much. I feel like people too, you know, the meme where Charlie's like, he's in front of the board and the strings are everywhere. And I see people, you know, on socials and here in the gym and stuff, overcomplicating things, and I'm reminded of that. But yeah, anyway, your pot of gold reference made me think of that. So for everyone who knows what that is, you're welcome. For everyone else, I'm sorry about that.
That's Charlie. Just it's me telling my wife why I need more shoes.
Yes, I love it. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about like optimal and complexity. And there's this other piece, creativity. And something that I love about your training and your philosophy is you're totally willing to load movements that other people don't load, and to explore new movement options. And not just explore them, but like fucking put them in the program and train them for a long time and just see what happens.
Yeah.
I love that. There are things that you do that I've looked at and been like, I see that and I raise you. I'm going to do that as well. And just see how it goes. I've just gotten to that place where I'm like, if I see some cool shit, I want to try it. And even one step further, like, there are reasons why you're attempting the things, trying the things, and loading the things. So it's not just for, look at this, you know what I mean? Which is also a common practice in our field at times, where it's like doing things just for the sake of fucking doing them because look at this. You're actually training it. So can you talk about like what drives you to be creative in that aspect? And then how do you add those things into programming? What's going through your head?
Yeah. Oh, so many ways to answer this question. One thing that I think happens is people that lift a lot, they forget what it was like when they were like put a barbell on their back for the first time. And so when you train someone and they're back squatting for the first time, like you're putting a general population person under the bar, they put the bar on their shoulders and they're like, this hurts.
It sucks.
Yeah.
It's not a fun experience.
No, it sucks. They're shaking like a leaf. Their shoulders hurt. Their neck gets like rubbed raw.
Right.
You know, like lifting it, like starting any new exercise is hard.
Yeah.
And like we've seen kind of a bit more of that with, I think more people are trying Zerchers, right?
Yes.
And it's like, my elbows hurt. I'm like, yeah.
Yep. Don't be soft.
Remember when you put a bar in like your back the first time or you front rack the first time? Like it sucks.
Yep.
But like you stick with something and it's no longer an issue.
Yeah.
It took me like 8 weeks probably of doing Zerchers to where I was like, oh, it's no big deal.
Yep.
You know,
I'm just doing Zerchers.
Right. And I think with any new exercise, I think people are like, they'll try something new and then be like, this sucks. I'm going back to back squats.
Yeah.
Like they get comfortable. Like, not that back squats are easy.
Right.
But like they just get used to the things that they've been doing and they don't like that experience. Just like the first time back squatter who complains about the bar on their neck, they do the same thing with these other novel exercises. They're like, my balance it's my balance.
Right.
I'm like, no, it's your first fucking time doing the exercise.
Like literally,
You know?
just hang in there a little while longer. Give it a week or two.
Right.
Yes.
So stuff like that. So like just overcoming that, like just give it a damn shot. Cause you'll be amazed at like what you can get good at and like things that seem like they're either, you know, a little too complicated or like your balance on a split squat or whatever. Just like give it a whirl for a while. And some of those things that were limiting factors are not going to be limiting factors anymore. So you can't judge an exercise too harshly by trying it once. You try it once, you're like, I don't like it.
Right.
You know, you tell your clients the same thing. You know, you get your client squatting, you're like, I don't like it. You're like, well, too damn bad.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, we're doing it next Monday, so I don't know.
Yeah. So like apply that.
Well, that's too damn bad.
Apply that to yourself a little bit more, you know? The other thing that's going through my head, in addition to just like, there's more good exercises out there that people just haven't explored, but like been willing to sit with some of the initial discomfort, is a lot of exercises. I think people get caught up in like just fake rules of like what isn't acceptable to load. You know, like rounding your back or whatever, like you load a Jefferson curl or whatever. And people are like, you know, you're going to break your back or like the worst deadlift form I've ever seen.
I love the comments. It's just like, yeah, see you in 10 years, buddy.
Yep.
It's like, actually, I've been doing it for 10 years, but yeah.
Stuff like that. So just like being willing to explore a wider range of like movement options that, you know, make people a little bit nervous. You know, stuff where like, you know, doing a single leg exercise, my knee might cave in a little bit or something like that. Where, okay.
Right.
You know, just gradually load it up. I've talked to so many people who when I finally encouraged them to actually load the landmine single leg deadlift, which I saw you doing.
Yeah.
And I know it's not a new exercise. People have been doing it forever. But I've been loading it up, you know, really, really heavy for
But chasing it like as like a primary, like we're gonna see what I can fucking do on
and
this.
getting six plates on there for reps.
Jesus.
which is it's a lot of fun. And so I've seen more people, you know, pushing this a little bit harder.
Yep.
I don't know what it is. It's like a tangent, but single leg exercises, people will be like a 700-pound deadlifter and like, I'm gonna do some single leg work, and they grab the same damn 53-pound kettlebell that everyone else in the whole gym uses for that exercise.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Oh my God. Just pick up a weight that's heavy for you.
Load it up.
Jeez. But anyway, get people doing like actually pushing themselves on the landmine deadlift. And so many people are like, oh, it hurts my knee. They get like lateral knee pain when they actually push this. I'm like, well, good. We're actually loading some tissue that has not been loaded. Don't do too much. Like, let's find the limit, back off a little bit. But like, I'm glad that we're actually getting some stimulus that is foreign to you.
Yeah.
You know, because if it just felt like everything else, then what's the point?
Yep.
You know, so and like we talked about side bends a little bit earlier of like, I don't think everyone has to do side bends. There's other ways to train your obliques and QL and whatever. But in my experience, when people do a heavy side bend for the first time, they are so sore. So
fucking wrecked.
So sore in so many places they didn't know you could get sore.
Yep.
And I'm like, I know we shouldn't chase soreness as like the goal of a training session.
Right.
But if you get that sore
it's
in muscles you didn't know you had, then maybe it's hitting some muscles that we haven't been training appropriately.
Yeah. It could be useful if an entire side of your body is completely annihilated by this exercise. Body weight, you know, exercise.
When we get people like sore in their intercostals and stuff for the first time, they're like, I didn't know I had muscles here.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's a shame we haven't been training those for your whole life. You know?
Yeah.
So I just like to break out and like train some of these muscles that like people are like, oh, I didn't know there's a muscle there. And to do that, you just got to be a little bit more broad with your exercise selection.
Well, so you touched on something that you helped inspire me with too, that I've noticed in my career early on. I was like, why does it have to be these 4 or 5 lifts that you chase as your quote unquote main lift?
Yeah.
Like, why are, you know what I mean? Like, I get it theoretically, like, you know, these compound movements that generally impact the nervous system the largest, or, you know, hit the largest amount of muscle groups at the same time or whatever. Like, that's typically the ones, you know, that end up being like the main movers. Why not other stuff? Like, why not? Why? And you, something I've noticed about your training is you're completely unafraid to say, I'm going to make this thing an absolute priority and let's see how it impacts the rest of my training.
Well, and a lot of that stuff, like I used to think along the lines of like, okay, I'm going to work my exercises from like biggest to smallest. Right. And I've just learned from pushing exercises like to the limit, like walking lunges, for example. I always see people do walking lunges at the end of a session, which is fine. Right. You can do them at the end of a session. But when I started doing walking lunges as like a primary, like I just want to see how heavy I can get these, they would wreck me more than max effort deadlifts. Like when you actually learn to load those up and you're doing walking lunges with like 350 pounds, I'm like, I am shot. My nervous system is gone. So I'm like, well, the logic of like putting that at the end of a session, I don't know, like if I do a bunch of other stuff first and then I get to walking lunges at the end, I can't lift nearly as much. Right. I'm like, it's all the same. Like when you figure out how to actually give that kind of effort, it's all, I don't want to say the same, but it's a lot more similar. Yes. Like deadlifts versus lunges, they can both absolutely wreck you if you're willing to
take it there.
If you're willing to take it there.
Totally.
And so then exercise order and stuff gets a little bit more interesting. It's like, well, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? The kind of framework of like, you know, do your heavy bilateral work and then like segue into unilateral and then accessories. I'm like, well, that's kind of breaking down a little bit. Like, what should I push first? And so taking a lot of trial and error, but I don't necessarily follow that like, you know, pathway that a lot of people do.
That traditional, very linear, you know, traditional S&C, or really any fucking training methodology for that matter. For the most part, that's the flow of operations.
And there's still truth to it. Like, you know, I wouldn't do all my like leg extension, leg curl, hip machines, and then like do all that first and then try to go squat on an ordinary basis. You know, there's some sort of like big to small order, but like I'll do heavy landmine work or whatever, heavy single leg work, lunges. I'll start a session with that sometimes. Sometimes I'll do, like supersets.
Do you have like a particular thing where it's like in my mind, I'm thinking when you're talking, I'm like, all right, wouldn't it be a much more practical use of exercise selection to just say, I'm going to prioritize the thing I need the most to move the needle, or that I feel like could potentially set me up to have more success later with these other exercises or whatever? Could that not be a more important principle or a more useful principle to follow?
That's definitely one of my guiding principles. But even that, sometimes I think if something's in my program, it's important.
Got it. Yeah. Right. There's no fluff anyway.
Right. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'll just do the end. It doesn't fucking matter. Like,
right.
I'm like, well, why are you doing it? Like, if it's in my program, it's because I care about it on some level.
Yes.
And that's sometimes in my experience. If I'm doing too much volume, for example, then like the lift, my last exercise in a session, if my volume's really high, it's so trash at that point anyway. I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah. Yes.
So if it's in my program, it's important. And so some of the things that I've done that aren't necessarily, traditionally optimal, maybe they're optimal for me, using that word correctly, I suppose.
Sure.
Is I'll do like a superset of hamstring curl and heavy ass lunges. So like I got something super, stimulating, doing a lot of glutes, quads, just like CNS is like shot.
Yep.
And then I don't say recover, but I'm like using different muscles, something not as draining.
Yep.
So then I end up getting to pack in a lot of work, like putting those two exercises together.
Yep.
And then because of like the hamstring curl is like a rest from the lunge and vice versa, they're different muscle groups. One's more intense, one's less intense. I feel pretty good after. And I'll have another similar pairing. Something like I'll maybe not for this particular workout, but like a pendulum squat and an RDL. Mm-hmm. Not a ton of overlap between those exercises. One's a little bit more axial load, a little bit more systemic fatigue. One's not quite as bad. Mm-hmm. Not quite. They're both
yeah, both pretty brutal.
But just like pairing things like that, using some supersets or doing like a big circuit.
Yeah, I love giant sets. Yeah. I'd use it with all my clients and all my athletes. It's just so practical and time efficient. And I think Brad Schoenfeld just put out a recent study. I don't know if you saw it, but it was like, it was, okay, so, and I think it was in trained individuals. And so, Brad usually does his damn thing when it comes to the studies.
Yeah.
But it was almost precisely the same amount of muscle growth and 46% less time using just supersets, and that was the only difference between the two groups.
It's just more efficient. And a lot of times how I decide, am I going to do superset the leg curl and the lunges versus do a big giant set or whatever, a lot of times it just comes down to logistics and like what gym am I in and how many people are there and whatever. So like if I'm at a really busy gym and I got all this shit to do, I'm like, okay, that's open, that kind of makes sense. It'll get the job done. Doesn't have to be perfect. It'll work. One of the gyms I train at, wide open, nobody's there. You can just like have your run of the place.
Oh, so sweet.
So I'll have like 5 exercises long, take 2 minutes between, rotate. And then like by the time you get back to this one thing, you're like, I'm ready to go. Like you're rested from that exercise. You get to push hard on everything. And I think that aligns with my philosophy that if it's in the program, it's important. I want to prioritize everything to some degree. There is some thought to like, I wouldn't do a bunch of lower back stuff to start a session.
Sure.
And then like, it's holding you back on everything.
Right. Yeah. Your low back is just blown up, fatigued. So you can't do a fucking thing with everything.
I'm not going to go in and like just trash my forearms. And, well, I can't hold on to shit now.
Right.
So there's that like that competing idea.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing of like, whenever people talk about fitness concepts, they want one rule, one framework.
One rule.
Like, what's
to rule them all?
Like, what's your like? What rule do you use for exercise selection or order or whatever? And it's like, well, there's this one and there's this one, and they don't always agree. And so you choose what you want to prioritize.
Yeah.
There's not always going to be like one simple. Well, let me check the formula and see what to do.
Mm-hmm. In terms of your creativity, what what are 1 to 3 exercises that you've taken that are commonly considered non-traditional?
Yeah.
That you've prioritized that have made like a big impact for you?
Yeah. So one I guess is traditional, but I hit 2.5 times body weight on a reverse lunge.
Wow.
Probably one of my proudest accomplishments in the gym.
That's absurd.
Yeah.
This is unassisted.
Unassisted.
You just raw dog.
Not a Hatfield raw dog.
Holy shit.
Yeah, hit a 405 lunge at
oh my God.
at 160 pounds.
Oh my God. I mean, that's impressive. That's sweet.
Thank you. And it took a long time to get there. Like
Right.
lunges almost never leave my program. I just like them. But seeing like what was possible and like getting to that milestone, I didn't think I would get there. Like I remember when I got, I remember when I got 2 plates the first time, I was like, man, 3 would be sick.
Right.
And then I got 3 and I'm like, is 4 possible?
Yeah.
And then I got 4 and I'm like, I'm like thinking about is 5 possible?
Right. Yeah.
Body weight. Like it's an ever moving goalpost. But I don't think most people are just like, they don't see the limit with or most people do see a
Right.
limit, or they just cap themselves somewhere.
Yeah.
But I'm like, more. It's like
Yeah.
the meme.
Yes.
Just more.
More.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the lunge for sure is just one that I've just taken so far, and it's been a lot of fun. And it like the strength I've built there shows up in so many other areas. It's funny though, because people, they'll see me doing it and they're like, do you think this like carries over to the back squat? I'm like, nah, not for me.
Yeah.
Like I'm at the point where like if I add 20 pounds to my lunge, my back squat's not going anywhere.
It doesn't do a damn thing.
Because my back squat, my legs could squat way more. Like I'm doing that on one leg basically. My back's the limiting factor on my back squats.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how much I add to my glutes, like it's just not going to carry over that much. And there's a lot of skill to it too. So like there's skill adaptations.
Totally.
Like if you're pushing double body weight on a lunge, I wouldn't worry. If you're thinking about what it's going to do to your back squat, you're just thinking wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong train of thought. But that strength has carried over in a lot of other areas. So like all single leg work, split squat, single leg deadlift, stair climbing, like anything where it's one leg in front of the other, I just feel super strong.
Hell yeah.
Super stable. Balance is great. There is some carryover to more than just the lunge.
Just for the sake of being strong as fuck at the lunge, which by the way, also all the reason you need. You said something. I was just like, I love the simplicity and brilliance of that. You're like, you hit 2 and you thought to yourself, 3 plates would be fucking sick.
Yeah.
Like that's a good enough.
That's good enough.
That's awesome. You know, that's a good enough reason.
Yeah.
All right. So the lunge, a 405 lunge.
405 lunge at 160 pounds body weight is one. Another one that I've been enjoying more recently is the Mansfield lift. Are you familiar with this one?
No, I'm not.
So it's a Zercher Jefferson.
Oh, okay. Yes, I have seen you do this.
And the specifications for the Mansfield variation are that your legs have to be totally straight, including your setup. So when you're bending down to get the bar,
no knee bend.
No knee bend.
You're totally locked out.
Totally locked out knee. Pick the bar up in your elbows. Stand up. No knee bend the whole time. So it takes immense, mobility, flexibility, whatever, to be able to get down into that position. Mm-hmm. So as part of that, I've been doing the true Mansfield lift with the straight leg setup, and also just Zercher Jeffersons and deficit Zercher Jeffersons.
That's what I was just about to say. I was going to ask you if I've seen you do deficit Mansfield.
Yeah.
But it's the Jeffersons I've seen you do on a deficit. Have you done both?
I can't typically get the straight leg set up with a deficit.
Yeah.
I would like to.
Yeah.
But this is, some other lifters have been doing it, like Tasha Louie and the Atlas Power Shrugs and Range of Strength. Like some of these guys that are just sick at this kind of stuff. I saw them doing the Mansfield lift. I'm like, why not a deficit?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Like, let's go deeper. And like, I just like pushing the boundaries on some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And like whether I'm going to be the best at it or whatever, like hinges are not my strong suit. especially like bilateral hinges.
I don't know, dude. You were cranking out 315 for many, many reps today. It looked pretty strong to me, but continue.
It's all relative.
Right. Yes.
But yeah, like bilateral hinges, I'm not great. Like I'm not a great deadlifter. I can RDL and stiff leg a little more, but it's not like the thing I'm the best in the world at. But that doesn't mean I can't push my limit and like try to do something cool with the exercise. Like let's push the mobility. Like I have short arms. Like I see some people deadlift and like their bars like still almost at their knees when they're standing up.
Yes.
I'm like, that must be nice.
Yeah.
Whereas mine's like at my waist at the top. Like, I got such a long way to go. So like I'm never gonna be a great deadlifter perhaps, but like I can go deeper.
Yeah.
So there's like pushing something. Like I try to get good at it all, but if I see an area where it's like, I think that'd be sick. Like a deficit Zercher Jefferson would be sick. Let's do it. Let's try it. And it was harder than I thought, but it took me like 3 months of work and I got it.
Nice.
So just doing stuff like that and having variety in your program of like pushing a lot of different qualities. And let's push the strength here. Let's push the mobility there. Let's push the volume here or whatever. Like taking your program in a couple different directions at once, I think just makes you better.
Yeah. One thing I've seen you do that's just incredibly impressive is the side bend with the weight on your hip, the hip dip.
Yeah.
I think I saw you do it with 100 fucking pounds. Is that right?
I did the 100. Yep. That was another one. I'm glad you reminded me of that one because I forgot about it.
It's your bottom leg, correct? That's on the bench, or was it your top?
I've done both. I got 100 on the bottom leg, so the abduction, abduction version, and then I've done it with 70 on the adduction, the Copenhagen.
Holy fuck, dude.
Yeah. I guess that's one of my like strengths is like those hip machines, hip ab and adduction. Crush those.
Not enough weight.
I love those. Just strong hips.
Yeah.
So like Copenhagen planks and then like the inverse, so like the abduction side plank.
Yeah.
Love those. So yeah, between two benches, single leg side plank, dip your hip down to the ground. That's another one of those where I'm like, why not more? Like I did those body weight. In my experience with core stuff is a little bit of a tangent. Is like when you're doing core stuff, you're using like respiratory muscles. And like breathing is tough. Like when you're doing any core exercise, even without a lot of weight, it's like harder to talk and breathe and whatever.
Totally.
And I find that it like gives you a false sense of what the RPE is. I feel like it gets skewed of you're like, oh, I'm out of breath. It's hard.
Yep.
It's like, you're not really out of breath. You're just like
having trouble breathing because you're working.
You're working the muscles around your lungs. And
yeah.
Because a lot of times people think a core exercise is hard. I'm like, well, let's just add some weight and see what happens. And they're like, oh, that's fine. Like, I think people undershoot core a lot because of that, like, sense of fatigue and breathlessness and stuff that comes with it. And they add reps, which I think is almost like the opposite of what I would do. Of like, you do 20 of any core exercise with any load, and like, it's going to feel kind of hard.
Right.
I can do 20 sit-ups. I'm like, I don't want to, I'm good.
Yeah, right. Yes, totally.
So having had that experience, like with clients and with myself, I'm doing these single leg side plank dips. And I'm like, I mean, they're hard, but also not really. So like, let's add some weight. I added a 10. I'm like, didn't even feel it. Let's do a 20. I'm like, all right, now we're getting somewhere. And so I'm like, well, let's just keep going. So then I decided to make that like a primary. Let's just push the side plank dip as high as I can. And I had gotten to 70 pounds on it. And then you know how weights will sometimes start talking to you in the gym. You're just like sitting there having the time, and then like this 100-pound dumbbell just out of nowhere is like, hey. Yeah, that happened to me. I'm sitting,
hey buddy.
I'm sitting in the gym and all of a sudden at 100, it's like, hey man, what's going on? Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. Let's just try it. And I got a set. I'm like, I was shocked. I'm like, I would not have thought like 3-4 months ago that you could put 100 pounds on your hip and do a single leg side plank dip. Like, it just sounds like something that you can't do.
Right.
But turns out you can.
Until you do.
Yeah, until you do it. Like, you will be amazed at what you can do. I shout out to Range of Strength. He posted a lift a couple days ago, and I saw it, and I'm like, you can't do that.
Yep.
That's not a possible human feat. Tried it. I'm like, this is hard. But like, I think what happens is people see stuff like that and are like, nope, can't do it. They try it once. Nope.
That sucked. No way.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, well, I've had that experience enough times with enough things that I just don't listen to it.
Yeah.
Like, just if you find something like that, that's all the more reason to be like, let's figure it out.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
when I see someone do something, even if it's like a challenge, like maybe not an exercise that you would incorporate. If someone does a challenge and I can't do it, I'm like, yes, I can.
Yeah.
Like, we can figure this out.
That makes me think of another principle that I mean, hell, it's on the shirt you gave me here, the anti-fragile lifting club. The idea of being the anti-fragile mindset.
Yeah.
Right. Can you speak a little bit about like the difference between like what being fragile, what the fragile mindset is, and being more anti-fragile, and how that shows up for your training and your programming for you and your clients?
Yeah, for sure. It's almost easier to describe what it's not.
Nice.
So being anti-fragile doesn't mean that you can't get hurt. It doesn't mean to like just push like, oh, your knee hurts, get over it. Like, it doesn't mean you ignore these things. But it does mean not catastrophizing them. And it means that like what you thought was the cause, or like why you think your knee hurts or whatever, you probably don't really know that well.
So true.
Like,
dude.
we blame these things. Like, we come up with these, like, I don't know, you're doing bench press and your shoulder hurts and you like swear off bench press.
Right.
Like, bench press hurt my shoulder, I'm never doing it again.
None of my athletes bench because I hurt my shoulder benching. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
There's like, shit happens, load management, pain's multifactorial. Like,
Yeah.
there's people that have talked at length about this, more articulately than I can in terms of the complexity of pain and injury and that kind of stuff. But it's about not letting stuff stop you that shouldn't.
Yeah.
Not letting that one experience you had with bench press stop you. Like, you don't know what happened.
Yeah, you don't fucking know. Neither does the PT. So, like, most people, when you get down to it, I've worked with enough high level people in different areas of fitness and recovery, and to understand that like usually the people who are the best at what they do, they'll look at you and tell you, be like, I'm not really sure.
Right.
It could be this or it could be that. Let's go explore some stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's the exploration.
Yeah.
Of like,
But that doesn't sell, Blenis.
Yeah.
I have to have an answer. I need you to tell me what's wrong and what exactly caused it so that I can buy the thing that's going to fix me.
Yeah.
Fix me, Blenis.
Get away from the root cause, the fixing, the like all this kind of stuff, and just explore, find what works for you. Be willing to poke into discomfort and things that scare you a little bit.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, maybe you hurt your shoulder once benching. Like, let's maybe revisit that intentionally and like build some confidence, because how shitty is it to go through the rest of your life and think you can't do that again?
Right.
You know, if there's a possibility that you can. And not saying that everything can be overcome. Like, there's bad shit that happens. There's catastrophic injuries that you can't just push through everything. But being willing to explore. To me, that's one of the central tenets of the kind of anti-fragile mindset. Is it's more about preparation than anything. Are you prepared for it? Are you trained for it? Do you have experience with it? And all of those things can be progressed over time, versus kind of a fear-based mindset of like, I hurt my back, and I rounded my back on this deadlift. I'm now afraid of it.
Right.
Could we have been better prepared for it?
Right.
And that's the difference. I hate seeing people confirm their own biases with these negative experiences, where they think something is dangerous and then they see someone else get hurt, or they get hurt doing the thing, and they're like, see, I rounded my back and now I'm hurt.
Yep.
It's like, well, you never do it, and then you did it.
Yep. Suddenly and abruptly, by yanking weight off the floor you had no business attempting to do, or whatever the case may be. Right.
Exactly.
Yep.
So it's all about preparation over fear, preparation over avoidance. But it's not, you see like people doing a bunch of like Jefferson curls, like back rounding stuff, scary position stuff. The anti-fragile mindset and like anti-fragile lifting is not just about doing those things.
Right.
It's like, what is the thing that scares you a little bit. Like, what's your weak spot? What's a movement that when you go to do it in the gym, those like demons come back and they're like, remember that time?
Yeah. Yep.
Like, what is that for you? And like leaning into that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's anti-fragile. It's not just like, oh, I'm just this freak that has like a enormously kyphotic, T-spine. And so like I'm anti-fragile because
I'm built like that, motherfucker. Yeah.
Right. That's not what it is. It's what's the thing that scares you a little bit. And so like for me, my knees, I don't know, man. I don't like the word bulletproof, but my knees are just bulletproof. Like my whole life, knees have never hurt. I can do anything and my knees are going to be just fine. Been long, like downhill ultras, sissy squats, reverse Nordics. I just can't hurt them. I've tried to hurt them.
Can't happen.
I can't.
Won't happen. Yeah. 405 lunges.
One day, I'm sure I'll look back at this and be like, oh, those were the days.
Yeah.
But for the time being, my knees are in pretty damn good shape. I can't say the same thing about my back. Like my entire lifting experience from the time I started when I was like 14, I've thrown my back out dozens of times.
Totally. Same.
And not doing anything wrong even. But when I was younger, when I was, 15 years old and I tweaked my back, I'm like, what'd I do wrong?
Yeah. Hypervigilant.
Yeah.
Over-aware.
Like it was probably my technique, right? So then
Yeah.
you like I'm like, okay, I need to get my technique better because that was the problem. Because like, what else would it be? I'm 15 years old. And then you start moving a certain way because I'm like, all right, neutral spine, and then like become the master of the neutral spine. I'm gonna become the master of core stability. I trained for the plank world record. I thought it'd be fun. I started just getting freakishly good at planks, and eventually I got to the point where it just was boring.
Yeah.
Could do a 30-minute plank.
Jesus.
And you can do a 30-minute plank with a weight belt, right? And my back still hurt.
Yeah.
I don't think it was my core stability.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. It wasn't. Yeah. That's McGill's wet dream is to have someone be able to perform a plank like that.
Oh man, like it's not that I didn't do enough bird dogs, right? Like I got the core stability down. And still, so it's like, well, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
You do everything. Like my technique's perfect. I can plank for hours basically, and it still hurts. And not like debilitating, right?
But it's just there.
It's just there.
Yep.
I'm like, what am I doing wrong?
Yep.
And it wasn't until I started doing other movements from gymnast. I started doing more calisthenic stuff, where you do like L-sit holds. I started doing Jefferson curls, which for some reason I didn't even think like I shouldn't do this. I'm like, I don't know. It's like a different sport. It's a different thing. I'm like, yeah, I'll do this exercise. And then I started to feel a little bit better in that way. Not without its obstacles. I hurt my back on a Jefferson curl before when I was like a teenager. Took me a while to revisit them. And I think that's what, and now like I've been doing this stuff long enough, not that you can prevent all injuries, but my back has never felt better. When I was a teenager traveling to races, I would get worried traveling on planes to races that like my back was going to flare up from sitting on an airplane.
Totally.
And it would.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Hell yeah.
You feel terrible.
Yeah. Yep.
There's times when I'm sitting on the airplane and I just feel it and I'm like,
it's happening.
Shit.
Fuck. Yeah. I'm gonna be in shambles.
And now doesn't even cross my mind. Like I'll slouch on the plane. It's a non-issue.
Yeah.
And I've never done more, heavy rounded back work in my life. So I just think it's funny when I see the YouTube commenters like, see your back in 10 years. I'm like, you should have seen it 10 years ago.
Right. Yeah. That's when I was really suffering.
That's when it was rough. And again, like it was never debilitating, but it's when it's always there. And it's like, I'm like a 20-year-old athlete. Why does my back hurt?
Right.
And so I just hate seeing people go down that same road of like trying to fix things when it just the fix that they're looking for isn't there.
Yeah.
Not that you can fix it with Jefferson curls either.
Right.
But like you don't have to be afraid of everything.
Right.
I just think that's a terrible way to go through life.
Totally. Speaking of fear, is cardio going to kill my gains, Blenis?
100%. Oh man. Why is it's what sells, right?
Yeah.
Gets views.
Yeah.
People are afraid of stuff.
Yeah.
Gotta give them something to be afraid of on this. I don't know.
Yep. Got to. Got to. Cardio's the devil.
You know, but that's the other thing too, is like people are either afraid of something or they're making like very absolute, like very polarizing claims.
This is the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so one of the first things that I always like to do with like the cardio discussion is like kind of meet people halfway and not say like, just what the hell's your problem, man? Like you just gotta just go run a marathon. It's not a big deal.
Right.
Like it's not gonna kill your gains. Just go do a marathon tomorrow. Like, I think that's kind of people go to the other extreme.
Right.
And they're like, cardio doesn't kill your gains. You can do as much as you want.
Right.
Like it's all in your head. You're just not eating.
Yeah.
Just like go do the thing. I'm like, well, there's always a cost to training.
Yes.
There's always a cost to effort and to adaptation and stuff. So, just like I think lifting interferes with lifting. Like you want to get good at all the lifts, like your squat may interfere with your deadlift training to some degree or whatever. Like the workout, the first few exercises you're doing in a session are interfering with the next few exercises in the session. So there's always interference. Like that's training. Training is balancing stress.
Yeah.
So I think when we, instead of viewing it as these very separate things of like cardio, strength interfering with one another, it's just training. Training interferes with training.
Yeah.
And you got to figure out that balance for yourself. I don't think that the kind of cellular interference effect, if you will, of like, you know, mTOR and AMPK pathways and whatever, that's so overhyped. It's ridiculous. But there's certainly truth to it's training. It's
training
stress,
costs.
It's time, it's energy, it's psychological motivation. It's all of those things. But I think people often nocebo themselves into the interference effect. And by that, I mean, they hear that cardio kills your gains. They have this, even if they don't believe it, they kind of believe it. Yeah. It's this thing in the back of your mind of like, cardio kills your gains, or my legs are tired. I ran this morning, lifted with Zach. Yep. Come in, it's like, well, my legs are shot, you know. Yeah. And just thinking that. Yeah. Believing that my legs are shot. Yeah. Knowing that I ran this morning.
It's in the same vein of like, you know, not attempting the exercise that tweaked your shoulder or whatever. Exactly. It's kind of from that same place. Exactly. It's a self-limiting belief. Yeah.
And so, you know, you walk in the gym, you're like, oh, my legs are tired. And like, you're already a step behind at that point. Yep. And so my general approach is like, fuck it, we ball. Like,
let's go, dude.
I'm here. I know the weight I can lift. Yep. Let's put it on the bar. Let's just do it. And if I can't do it, I can't do it. Right. You know? Yeah. And realizing that you don't have to feel 100% your best self to have a good training session. Nice. I think that a lot of people, they'll carry some fatigue from cardio. And if anything, I would say that fatigue from cardio is less interferent or interferes less with lifting than fatigue from lifting interferes with lifting. So if you come in the gym and your legs are still sore from like the lift you did 3 days ago, you're kind of fucked.
Yeah, you're totally fucked. Yeah.
But if your legs are tired from like this completely different thing, you'll probably still be all right. Like it's not going to be fun, but you can do it. And so I think getting people to have that realization of like, it's not really the same. Like I get that you're tired, but like kind of suck it up. Yeah. See what you can do. Like, yeah. You don't have to love it.
There's right. You don't have to like this. You know, I think there's also like, just warm up and see how you feel. Yeah. Because some of my best sessions have come from days where it's like, I've kind of, you know, well, maybe I didn't sleep as much as I should have, or, you know, I missed a meal yesterday, or I'm a little, you know, I'm a little stressed, or I don't have as much time as I think, you know? Yeah. And in my mind, I can build this thing up. It's like, I'm going to have a subpar experience here. Yep. And then I get warmed up and I fucking hit a PR, you know? Yeah. And it's like, you don't really know until you get the juices going and you start cooking a little bit how the soup's going to turn out, you know?
And I'm all for auto regulation, right? Right. But I think sometimes for maybe lack of knowledge or deep experience with it, people auto-regulate in the wrong direction when it comes to kind of hybrid training. and they'll come into the gym, they're a little tired from cardio. And so they're like, I'm not feeling it today. So like, I'm not going to go super heavy. I'm going to like do some back off. I'm just going to do like some back offs and do some 3x10s, do some more like, I'm going to do like low weight, high rep. I'm just going to get some volume in. Like, it's completely backwards, if you ask me, of like trying to take the intensity in the gym is the thing that you're missing from cardio training. Like, that's what makes them different. You can come to the gym, you can do some like, high intensity metabolic circuit, density work. You can make your strength training metabolically demanding in some sense if you want. You're already doing cardio. Why would you do that? It's the
work the ends of the spectrum here.
Right. Work the ends of the spectrum. You don't need to come in the gym and try to get just get a pump with like a bunch of sets of 20. Like, you just got a leg pump from your run or whatever.
Right.
Like, you're here in the gym to lift, with as much intensity, as much weight basically as you can lift. And if that means that you need to cut the reps today, if that means you need to cut the volume today, do that. If you're tired from cardio, I still want you lifting heavy. Right.
Don't compromise your intensity, like the effort that you're bringing to the table.
Right.
Adjust other things. Adjust what you're saying. Things.
People they're used to like coming to the gym and working out for an hour, right? Like, they have an hour session. I would rather you come in and give me everything you have for 30 minutes than come in and half-ass the
whole thing. Yeah, totally.
Right? And so that's the mistake I think people make with hybrid training is they adjust in the wrong directions. They make the wrong sacrifices. And if we're going to be really efficient with our training, which you certainly can, you can come in and get a great 30 to 45 minute lift, high intensity, and just be willing to say that's enough.
Yep.
You don't have to lift 90 minutes.
Yep.
If you're trying to go for a long run and lift 90 minutes, like, of course it's a lot. That's a shit ton.
Yeah.
That's not realistic for most people. So I think doing it well means like trimming the fat, being super efficient with your strength training. And if that means you got 30 to 45 minutes of like balls to the wall intensity before you're toast, that's it then.
I want to shift things as we're getting close to time, but I want to make sure that I get some of this from you in before we end the show today. You have had, at least in the time I've been following you, some fantastic growth on socials. And I'm assuming there's been a correlation to the growth of your online business as well. And you've got a very just incredible name for your training program. Can you speak to growing on social media, growing an online business, and kind of how all that's interconnected and how you navigate it?
Still figuring some stuff out, right?
Yeah, man.
To a constant education. But yeah, the growth has been tremendous. It's more than I would have ever expected. I'm glad that I've been willing to embrace the growth. There was times when my business got to a certain size, I get a certain number of online clients and I'm like, I'm at capacity. Like, I can't handle anymore. That's all I can do. I wasn't really at capacity. My systems just weren't good enough. So I refined the system, make it easier to work with more people, streamline things, streamline elements of communication, streamline payment processing, streamline organization, like client information organization, like refine your systems. And I'm like, I paid for this service and that service. I organized my calendar. I got files here, whatever. I just save myself 2 hours a week. I'm going to add some more clients.
Yeah.
And so there's this like evolution of like, I keep being able to do more and more than I would have thought just by being more organized, more efficient, doing things better.
Yeah.
And I think some people they're not willing to invest in that. And sometimes it's not their fault. They're busy. They're stuck working, in the business. So it's hard for them to work on the business.
Yeah. Totally.
And it's hard to have that balance. But I think carving out some time to like just work on your business, make things better, organize your systems, template out like 20 different programs. So when you get a client that has XYZ goal, you can drag this one, customize it to them versus I'm creating this whole structure from scratch every single time.
Yep.
Not that it's cookie cutter, but you have these templates built for different types of people.
Totally.
And then it's like, okay, now I just saved myself 10 minutes. It's now 10 minutes faster to create this person's first week. You do that a bunch of times and all of a sudden you're really cooking. So I think if you do want to experience that growth, make sure you continue to carve out time for yourself to work on other stuff too. Because it can be really easy to just get sucked up in like the day-to-day grind. And then you're like, I don't know where I'm going to go from here. Like I can't handle anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm at capacity. But I think there's always ways to do it better. Always ways to scale. You just have to be willing to think outside the box sometimes. But the challenging part with social media growth is I think some people just want to win the internet. They just want the followers.
Yeah.
But what are they doing with them?
Right. Totally.
Conversion, monetization, whatever. If you can't do that, then what is the point?
Yeah. Why are you doing this?
Why are you doing it?
Just for clout?
Right.
Yeah.
And so like when people are, and there's, it sounds corny to say it's all about the balance, right? Because it doesn't mean anything. Mm. But you do have to balance different types of content creation. Because if you just focus on trying to win the internet, then you have a reel go viral. You post a picture of your dog and you get 1 million likes on it. Mm-hmm. Now you have a bunch of people who like cute dogs. Don't give a shit about your program.
Right. 100%. Yes.
Uh-huh. Not that you can't, post a picture of your dog. It's great. But like, you got to make people care about you and your product. Yeah. And like, you have to, innovate in some way. You can't just be going for clicks and for clout and whatever, because then your conversion's going to be terrible. You're going to be like, I don't understand. I have 100,000 followers. I can't sell a product.
Right.
Yeah. So like I thought when I started on Instagram, I'm like, I want to get like 100,000 followers or whatever. Mm-hmm. The amount of money I was making when I had 5,000 followers was crazy I'm like, that's nuts. I can't believe you can do that with like, I don't even have a big following.
Yeah.
And then I start playing a game of like, well, if I can make this with 5,000 followers, I wonder how so-and-so is doing.
Right.
You look at
it's not people, apples to apples.
It's not. I saw someone once upon a time who was being very open about their experience. Much larger page than I shared some of their financial information. I was like, I was making more than them with like 1/10 of the following, And so the numbers aren't everything. The growth isn't everything. Mm-hmm. So I think focusing on the quality of your audience, the engagement of your audience, I would much rather have, 10,000 really engaged people than 100,000 people that like, I don't know.
Yeah, they followed me for the one post and then I actually put time and effort into something and they scroll right by it because it means nothing to them.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah.
I had one reel go especially viral and I got a bunch of thousands of followers out of it. And I was like, I don't know if I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
maybe that
was it that reel of you doing the side bend?
No, it was just me running shirtless in the treadmill, which it's so funny. It went viral because people started saying steroids or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Which is so funny to me. And my wife especially, she like thinks it's hilarious because she's like, they should see what you really look like or whatever. I'm like, screw you.
Yeah.
But it's, it's crazy what you can do with some good, angles and lighting and
totally.
Proportions. Mm-hmm. I can look much bigger on the internet when there's not like a normal sized human being next to me. But yeah, I was just like running, talking about like how running doesn't have to kill your gains. Yeah. Simple little slideshow. Got, a few million views, couple thousand followers out of it, which was great. I'm like, I don't want to do another one of those for a while. I don't want to just have followers pouring in because they thought I looked nice running on the treadmill or whatever.
And now you're a slave to this new content tactic.
I want people to follow me because they like the deeper stuff I have to say about training and they like my philosophy and that kind of stuff. That's the following that I want.
Right.
So you just have to be careful when playing those games. If like, it's not just about what's going to get clicks. It's like, who's clicking?
Yeah.
What sort of following do you want? And And, I have some great conversations in like my comments on posts and stuff, like some of the best people in the industry, just chatting it up, and it's super fun.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have a post that gets, for me, like a bad post gets 1,000 likes. I'd rather get 1,000 likes and like be having conversations with guys like you, than get like 10,000 likes and like a bunch of fire emojis
fire emojis, or people being like, wait till you blow your back out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, just being strategic and don't care about the numbers so much.
Yeah. Well, look, as we approach time, I've got a few pre-planned segments for you.
Okay.
This first segment is brought to you by Plyomat. Plyomat is the world's best jump mat. I use it all the time, me, my athletes. All right, the segment's called Rant and Rave. So, rant. What is something that you see in fitness or just in our space in general that you don't love, that you'd like to see less of? Rave, the opposite. What's something that you see that you like, that you'd like to see more of?
Because of some of the things we've touched on already, I'm going to change gears.
Okay.
Rant. The sexualization of fitness, especially women's fitness, of one, trying to gain followers just from like, you set up your little camera, you walk away, show off your butt.
Right.
Buy my program.
Yep.
Hate that.
Yeah.
Drives me absolutely nuts. Can't stand it. And it goes for men too. It's a little different.
Yep.
But just the whole, like, just trying to sell a program because you look a certain way.
Yeah.
I hate everything about it. So if we could just stop doing that stuff, I think that would be great. If we could stop with like the booty programs and whatever, it's like some nice shorts, but like, I don't think your workout program is anything special. Be great if we could just stop doing that shit. So yeah, that's my rant, is if we can just stop basing people's worth, giving people follows, buying people's programs, selling programs, all based off of
how they look,
how you look. Let's stop it.
Yeah. What would be a rave? So what's something that you see that you're like, fuck yeah, dude, let's do more of that?
I've seen a big shift, and people will talk shit and they'll be like, hybrid isn't anything new. People have been doing strength and conditioning forever, whatever. But I have seen more and more strength athletes embrace cardio than ever. And I think it's a fantastic shift. I think the shit talkers, the anti-hybrid, the hybrid just fitness, whatever, just get out of here. Like, people are doing more cardio than they ever have. People are less afraid of cardio killing their gains than they ever have. If you're someone that's in the industry and you see it and you like get sick of seeing people talk about it, I get it. Like, you're in the circle, you see the same shit every day. But in terms of like what it's doing for the broader population, it's awesome.
Yeah, totally.
So if I have to see another post about how cardio doesn't kill your gains, whatever, bring it on.
So be it.
I love to see it.
I love that. Very cool. Okay, this next segment is brought to you by Squat Wedgies. Squat Wedgies is an adjustable squat wedge. It weighs about 22 pounds, and it's made out of rubber, so it doesn't slide on like things like hardwood or other surfaces. You can use Coach 'em Up 15 at checkout when you order your Squat Wedgies. The segment is called 3 Things. So, what are 3 things that someone can do right now to become a better hybrid athlete?
Okay, first of all, with regards to squat wedgies, when you said squat wedgies, I was picturing the heel inserts.
Nice.
And then you said 22 pounds. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've got to see one of these.
Fuck ankle weight. Have you heard of squat wedgies?
Oh my God. All right. I get it now.
Yeah.
All right. So, I think there's 3 main categories of want to be, future hybrid athletes. One is the strength athlete who's not done cardio. One is the endurance athlete who's not done strength. And then there's just the total newbie, which I think is less common. But I have seen more and more people, I've gotten some people reached out who are like not really into fitness. And they're just like, I've been inspired, I want to go all in. So like, they're out there. But I think more commonly it's they're already in fitness somehow. They've just coming at it from one side of it. And I think their journey is different. So if we think about, the strength athlete new to cardio versus the endurance athlete new to strength, very, very different individuals, different mindsets. Their struggles and their obstacles are going to be different. So the things may vary a little bit depending on the person. I think an overarching theme is patience, in that if you are an athlete of any kind, once upon a time you were really shitty at it, and you've probably kind of forgotten what that was like.
Totally.
At one point in your life when you started lifting, it was hard. You were weak, you were out of shape, you didn't know what you were doing. You walked in the gym, you're kind of intimidated, you didn't know what your plan was for the day. But people forget what that's like. And I think they have the expectation that they're just going to be able to pick up this other sport. They're like, I'm just going to start running. It'll be chill. Like the only way to get good at something is by being bad at something for a while. So whether you're a strength athlete that's starting to run or do cardio or whatever, there's going to be a period where it kind of sucks. And I think just realizing that, I was like, yeah, you can drag it out. If you're super conservative, if you just are very, very, very incremental, like just add a tiny bit at a time, but then it takes forever. Like there's no real way around the struggle. You're either in for a very long process of getting used to and familiar with cardio, or you're going to kind of dive in and it's going to be a shit show for a couple of months. Just embrace it. We joke that, cardio doesn't kill your gains and whatever, but at the beginning, stuff's not going to be that great.
Right.
Like your first week where you're like, I'm going to add running this week. Like, yeah, your squat's probably going to,
you're going to feel buried. Yep.
It's just going to happen.
Yep.
And people get really frustrated. They're like, well, what did I do wrong? Like I added running and my lifts tanked. I'm like, well, how long have you been doing it? They're like, ran for 2 weeks. It's terrible.
Right.
I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Your first 2 weeks of anything. The first 2 weeks I did stiff legged deadlifts were terrible.
Right. Very, very sore. Yeah.
So just leading into that and give it a long period, be gradual, be incremental, but just be patient. And that goes for endurance athletes adding strength too. Of you're used to going out, waking up for a run and you pop out of bed, maybe a little tired from a previous run, but for the most part, you kind of spring out of bed and you feel pretty good. You do some squats, some lunges for the first time, you are not going to feel good rolling out of bed the next morning.
Right. Yes. Exactly.
And you're going to be slower on your run. Your runs are going to feel like shit. Your legs are going to be heavy.
It's going to take a while before that jog starts to feel a little more comfortable. Yeah.
But you do adapt.
Yeah.
Your first few weeks of lifting is going to suck. And again, not to say that, cardio kills your gains or vice versa, but there's definitely an initial acclimatization process of getting used to these new types of stress. So that is the absolute biggest single piece of advice to any of these people, is just be patient. And again, there's kind of two ways to do it. One, super gradual, super conservative, takes a long time, or two, kind of dive into the deep end and it's going to just really suck for a shorter period of time. But both those options kind of suck in their own way.
Right.
Specifically for the strength athlete adding cardio, I think a common mistake, so something that they should look out for, is they have this baseline fitness in terms of force production, a willingness to suffer. They have a lot of good athletic attributes that can serve them when it comes to cardio, potentially to a detriment.
Yeah.
And that I've talked to strength athletes who they've never run before in their life. And they're like, I started running, I ran 5 miles yesterday.
Yep.
I'm like, why? Why did you do that? And, they're fit enough that they can, but that doesn't mean they should.
Right.
I'm like, well, what are you thinking? And then, they're like, well, it was fine. I survived. And they do it again. And they're like, hey, my Achilles has been really bothering me.
Bingo. Yep.
No shit.
Yep.
So just not doing too much too soon, which is kind of obvious, but sometimes things you can do, you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And you should be intentionally methodical and intentionally kind of hold yourself back on some things. And to get around that, I think if you're new to cardio, regardless of what your goal modality is, if you want to be a runner or whatever, is just mix it up. Like do a wide variety of cardio. Run, do the stairs, spend some time on an erg. Like you can ramp up your cardio volume, but just don't do any one thing too much, because you just don't have like the tissue capacity for that kind of endurance. Even if you can grit through it because you're a tough guy, like I get it.
Right.
Just don't.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest piece of advice for them. And then for the endurance athlete looking to add strength, I think the biggest mistake and biggest piece of advice, and we touched on it earlier in the conversation, is remember that strength is meant to be different than what you've been doing.
Yeah.
And I think they often walk in the gym and they want to play to their strengths. I've been guilty of this in some ways of you're going to outperform high rep work. Mm-hmm. You are going to outperform single leg work generally. Don't get too stuck just training your strengths. You can do some of it. I think you should train broadly. But the things that you're really bad at, like ask a marathon runner to test their vertical, horrible.
Yeah, very bad.
The things that you are bad at, those are the things you should be prioritizing in the gym if you want to make as much like well-rounded hybrid progress as possible. So if you are like a distance runner, cardio athlete, do the stuff that you look stupid doing. Do the plyos, do the jumps, try to Olympic weightlift or something, like all the things that you're like super bad at and you're like, I look like an idiot in here. Those are probably the things that are going to serve you the most in the long run. And you just kind of got to get over it. Just do the stuff. You will get better at it. But the stuff you're bad at is where you should be spending more time. Don't just come in and do 50 rep sets in the leg press. You're already good at that.
Yeah.
That's not what you need to be strength training for. So just make sure you're leaning into those weaknesses a little bit.
That's good advice. Speaking of advice, this next segment is called unsolicited solicited advice. And an example could be you're checking into the hotel here in Austin, and there happens to be someone checking into the hotel next to you. You never met this person. They're a total stranger. And you take it upon yourself to just lean over and whisper into their ear some piece of advice. What would that advice be?
Mechanical tension is the primary driver of hypertrophy.
Hell yeah. God, that's so good. Hell yeah.
If more people would understand that, I think all of our lives, all of our jobs would be a lot simpler. I think most people, one of their primary goals should be to add muscle mass. And the easiest way to do that is adding more weight over time.
Yeah.
It's not fancy techniques. It's are you adding weight to the exercise? It's not, are you doing a special number of reps? It's not, did you get a pump because you didn't rest very long? It's not because you did a special sort of superset or whatever. It's just tension. And most of the questions that I get from people try to like avoid that for some reason. Mm-hmm. Like, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I do that? And it's like, well, have you considered applying mechanical tension? And unfortunately, it does not, to this day, get prioritized enough.
Alec, thank you. This time has been awesome. I would like to direct people to where they can find you. So socials and programming, and where can people get involved with you? Yeah,
so I'm most active on Instagram at Alec Blenis. You can get my programs there. I have a link. You know where to find that stuff.
You know what to do.
You know what to do. I got my Sex and Zombies program.
How the Sex and Zombies name?
This is going to take a minute because I love the story.
Okay. All right.
I hope his name's Tim, actually. Tim, if you're out there, this one's for you. Guy at my gym used to train there. Haven't seen him. Maybe he moved. I don't know. But a guy named Tim used to train at the gym I trained at. Big dude, strong dude, looks great, super jacked, long hair. He looks like Tarzan. He used to be a football player. But his workouts in the gym were insane. And we're in like a kind of a more affluent, quiet gym. A lot of older people. People paying a lot of money to be there. They've got like the elevator music background. This guy's repping out like 315 on bench, supersetting it with plyo push-ups, sprinting across the gym to like do some shit on the cable stack, slams it down. He's not afraid to make noise.
Right.
He's not afraid to sweat all over.
Tim doesn't give a fuck.
He doesn't give a fuck. You know, it's just amazing. And some of the stuff, I'm like, dude, what are you training for?
Right.
You know,
Who hurt you? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like that. And then one day I'm walking out of the gym, and I didn't expect this because he's a big dude, strong dude. He gets on his bike and he just starts tearing out of there. He's biking home from the gym or whatever, tearing it up. I'm like, God damn, I gotta talk to this dude. And he has this energy that like, I don't think most people talk to him.
Yeah.
But I was walking out again one day and I was walking out next to him. I'm like, hey man, I gotta stop you. I gotta introduce myself. What's your name? I want to talk. Like, what are you training for?
Yeah.
Looks me dead in the eye. Sex and zombies. I was like, what? He's like, I want to look good naked and I want to be ready for the apocalypse.
Wow.
I'm like, that is a fucking program name.
Wow.
I'm like, and so like a year or two goes by. I still think about this guy, Tim. I haven't seen him in years now. But Tim, if you find this, let me send you a shirt or something. I hope you're well.
So program name, Sex and Zombies, at Alec Blenis. Any other socials, any other mediums?
Starting to work on my YouTube a little bit.
Nice.
Hopefully some long form stuff. People seem to want that and to like that, but it's hard to make.
It takes time.
It takes time.
Yeah, and editing. Dude, thanks again.
Thank you, dude.
Coming down here.
That was fun.
This has been a lot of fun. To everybody watching and listening, thank you. And we'll see you next time.